Our next guest is the chairman, CEO, and executive editor of Africa.com, a website that receives an astounding 3 million visitors a month.
Wow, that is amazing.
Wow.
Here to discuss her new documentary, Africa Straight Up, stereotypes about the continent, and her upcoming trip to Africa with President Obama. Wow. Please welcome Teresa Clarke. Thank you for coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
My
This is
goodness.
exciting stuff.
It is an exciting time.
Wow, with the president? We'll get to that in a minute.
Okay.
But let's talk about the new documentary. You really want to address stereotypes that are surrounding the continent.
Yes.
What do you think those stereotypes are, or the myths about the continent, other than the fact that people think that Africa is still just one country?
Oh, gosh.
Well, you both know what they are. I think people think of Africa and they think of negative things. They think of poverty, they think of disease, they think of famine, of war. They think of it as a place to be pitied. And so we wanted to create something that addresses all of those and helps people to see the real Africa, not through rose-colored glasses, the good, the bad, and the ugly, but all of the above.
All of the above.
Well, tell us how your documentary, Africa Straight Up, attempts to actually eradicate some of those negative stereotypes.
Well, yeah, there's a lot out there on Africa for people who are really interested in finding the truth. But we wanted to make something that was accessible and fun. That's why I'm very happy to be part of your entertainment show, because we like to think that our film is entertaining. We wanted it to go down easy. We wanted to partner with people like MTV Africa to get good music and to show the commonalities that we have with Africa, and largely through music, because music is a universal language. So that was a real base that we used to try to connect the two cultures and help Americans learn more about Africa.
Now, this documentary was inspired in part by a TED Talk that Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie gave.
Yes.
And she's a prominent Nigerian writer. And essentially, she was arguing that Africa's story shouldn't be one single story. It should be a multitude of stories. What about her talk resonated with you?
You know, I think that her talk really provided a structure and a framework for us to think about creating the documentary. We initially thought about doing it, I don't know if you remember Coney 2012 last year, which was the most viral video in the history of YouTube.
Wow.
It got over 100 million views in 1 week. And it
What
showed...
was it about that video, do you think, that just made everybody click, and not just click once, repeatedly?
Yeah, you know, it was about this depraved warlord who took children and made them into child soldiers and girls into sex slaves, and people wanted to help Africa, and that's what this film inspired people to do, to help. But I think that in the process of doing so, it was just reinforcing these negative stereotypes. And so that was a big part of the inspiration, was to say there's not just one story about Africa, there are many stories. There may be situations like that that require our help, but there are many more things that we can learn from Africa, technology that we're adopting from Africa, ways in which we can learn, engage, benefit, invest, and I wanted to make sure that we were telling those stories also.
Do you think that Western media prefers the traditional narrative of Africa being this, you know, crime-infested, corrupt, AIDS-rattled place, or do you think that Western media just doesn't know any better?
Yeah, I think to some degree people really don't know. I mean, I'm sure, you know, you're from Nigeria. I know that you've come across this where people are often surprised. People really just don't know.
But do you think that's just an easy out excuse for people? Because, I mean, if you just, you know, Google, you can see that there are downtowns, there's 5-star restaurants and resorts and hotels there. So are they just being lazy and just don't care to be educated about it?
I think all of us are lazy. I mean, you know, we only know what comes to us. We digest that which comes to us. So that's why we wanted to make it easy for people to see another side to it.
But when you were working on this project, were you surprised by anything you encountered, any findings that sort of made you say, that's interesting?
I think that the piece that we really like and that a lot of people really liked is the technology. We like telling the story about how Africa, in particular Kenya, is this silicon savannah where there are wonderful developments that are being created there that have been adopted by the U.S., by Japan, by Haiti, in order to help, for example, in disaster recovery. I mean, the fact that we're using technology created in Africa blows people's minds.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, we can't talk about the documentary without talking about the music.
Of course.
You mentioned it earlier. Shannon, you were into the Nigerian rapper named M.I. He's featured in, what's the other, Lyra?
Lyra?
Yes.
Lyra. She's a South African singer.
Yes.
How'd you go about choosing these pop stars and getting them affiliated with this project?
Well, I guess I would have to say I knew both of them, and I asked them for their help.
Okay.
And so,
So
and
you
it
have
was
connections.
well, it wasn't hard. I mean, I think first in the case of Lyra, you know, she's a Sony recording artist. You know, she's multi-platinum. She was nominated as International Artist of the Year by BET. You know, it wasn't hard to choose her music. I love her music.
Yeah.
Absolutely love her music. I think she, in particular, she resonates with African Americans or Americans who like R&B. People think of her as a younger version of Anita Baker in some regards.
That's true.
And you hear her music and you don't realize that it's African. Not that you shouldn't want to recognize it as African, but it just feels familiar and comfortable, and people are drawn to it. And I think it helps to create that bridge. And the same with M.I., who is you know, a rapper with a real social conscience and wants to make a difference. And I think that it was very easy to want to partner with him because he really gave us a big push.
Well, it's definitely going to be a big push when people start logging on, trying to see this thing. Do you guys think that this has opened doors to more documentary opportunities for you all?
Absolutely. I mean, it was so hard for us to choose because, as you pointed out, you know, Africa is not a country. And this is Africa straight up. We could have done Nigeria straight up, Kenya straight up, South Africa straight up, and we plan to do a series along those lines.
Oh, wow.
I think you have a TV show on your hands, too. Just like break it down by country as you go along.
Yes.
I'll take 10%. Thank
We'll
you.
have to ask you.
Well, really quickly, talk to us about this upcoming trip to Africa with the president. What can we expect?
Well, we're very excited to have been chosen by the White House Traveling Press Corps to travel with President and Mrs. Obama on this historic trip to Senegal, to South Africa, and to Tanzania.
My goodness.
And so we'll be covering the trip from an Africa.com perspective, which will be different from the major news outlets. We'll really be looking at some of the softer issues, looking at how people in Africa are responding to the president, thinking about what this trip means to them. What does it mean to the president and to his daughter? What does it mean to the president to be taking his daughters to Gorée Island and seeing the place where so many of our African-American ancestors came from Africa? I think it's a very different trip for him than it might be for another president.
Absolutely.
Definitely. So when can we start logging on to read these clips? When's the trip?
Right now.
Right now?
Yes, we have some pre-questions coming up that we put to the White House,
Okay.
and those will be posted within the next day.
Okay, we'll be
Nice.
logging on to Africa.com to check it out.
And where can we catch Africa straight up?
You can find Africa Straight Up on Africa.com.
Okay.
You can, if you don't find it there, you can also go to YouTube.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being here, and safe travels.
Well, we'll see you there as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely, and report back.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
You're watching Arise Entertainment 360.